to a mission of computing for the common good. For us, that reflects itself in our research, in our education, and in our service to the community and the world. And so you will see examples. Many of you will work on projects where your research is making systems fairer, more equitable, safer for people to use, and where it is being applied to help with climate change, help with improving healthcare, a whole range of wonderful things that we can do with our computing superpowers. In education, I hope you will get a chance throughout your time here to understand and explore the impacts of your work, and get the background and the sense of your responsibilities, again, as you graduate with advanced degrees in computer science. And in terms of outreach, you will have plenty of opportunities to provide service, whether it's through your research, some of the sorts of projects I mentioned, or whether it is through clubs, working with undergraduate students, doing outreach in high schools, and so on. I hope you'll take advantage of the full set of opportunities we have here. We have a very a rich community in the sense of so many different activities going on. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of all of them. I know you're all probably thinking you're going to dive right into those PhDs and be very focused on your research, but please take some time to take care of yourselves. We're all coming off of a very, very hard period. It's been very stressful for virtually all of us. Be kind to your faculty, be kind to each other, but most of all, be kind to yourselves, because that's where all of this starts. I think, beyond that, I just really want to say welcome. It's really wonderful to have you here. For those of you who have traveled a long way to be here, we really appreciate that you have made it. Although we are starting with this virtual kickoff because of practicalities, like the dean couldn't get to campus this morning because I have so many meetings, we do look forward to seeing you in person. Most of our events and most things going on this fall will be in person. We will all look forward to greeting you in what do they say, in real life, IRL. So until I see you in real life, I'm going to stop blabbering, and I'm going to turn things over to our wonderful chair of the faculty, James Allen. We have no departments in our college. We are a single unit school, which means that one poor individual, in this case, James, gets the task of corralling all of the faculty. He's a very patient man, fortunately, and he will probably have more to say about that. So James, all yours.
Thank you, Laura. It's tempting to curse something very minor and to demonstrate my lack of patience, but I guess I'll avoid that. Welcome, everyone. As Laura said, I'm the chair of the faculty here in the college. Also, as she said, this has been a really, really difficult last year and a half, and I expect that this coming year, at least the fall semester, will be not as easy as we dreamed, but still somewhat straightforward. For a lot of our returning students, so you folks are all new or will be new to UMass, or at least new to the PhD program. But even some of our returning students are new to UMass because they may have done things completely virtual last year, or they may have been in town but not actually come into the building or something like that. We have also a lot of undergraduates who are new and who've probably been virtual. Those of you who are, you were probably also virtual last year, so you've had a hard time in all that. We're all facing these uncertainties about what the Delta variant is going to do, how the vaccines and the masks will help. We're dealing with how to use masks, what it's like to be in a mask all the time when you're around people, and how we make sure everyone is compliant to the policies that the university has and the policies that will probably evolve, I hope, in good directions over the course of the semester. On top of that, of course, we've all been faced with the challenges of racism and anti-racism and equity and diversity and natural disaster challenges and political challenges over the last year. So we're all mentally stressed. As Laura says, please take care of yourself and please be very compassionate with everyone else at all levels, in particular our staff who are working incredibly hard to make everything play out for you. To that point, I want to mention one thing about surviving here as a PhD student. I think that perhaps already, and if not already, then very quickly, you will realize that Eileen coordinates nearly everything that isn't actually part of your studies, your actual classwork, or your assistantship duties themselves. So even if you can't bring yourself to read email from everyone at UMass, every official at UMass, absolutely unequivocally read the emails that Eileen sends you and respond to any emails that require a response. That will make your life much easier, and it will also make her life a lot easier, which will be good. I will admit that you should probably also do the same thing for the email messages that come from your GPD, your graduate program director, Andrew McGregor. But quite frankly, Eileen is more important. In addition to that, in terms of surviving, do get out of the building, get out of your apartments while the weather allows it. It's pretty nice right now, and it's only going to get a little better, certainly running up through the leaf peeping season that happens very early October, end of September, early October. This is a beautiful area. Take advantage of it before it's bleak and snowy, which will happen sooner than we'd all like. Now, obviously, this is a little harder if you don't have a car or a friend with a car or something like that, but there are still opportunities. The bus system can take you close to several places that might be interesting. On top of that, watch out for university-wide and college-wide social events that might be appealing to you, that would get you out of your, away from your computer and your phone, let's say. Once you're, well, I guess tomorrow you will be starting to take classes. I hope you will find that we have a nice variety of classes at the master's and PhD level, which are the only ones that you're likely to be interested in within computer science. There are also obviously classes that may be appropriate for your own studies across campus or even just for your interests. I do apologize on behalf of the faculty if there are not enough seats in your favorite class. Classroom space is a scarce commodity everywhere on campus, not just in computer science, but everywhere. Enrollments are up, more people are on campus, and there's just not quite enough space to teach all the classes we'd like to, or to have all the students in the classes that we like to do. But we will continue to try, and I hope that you will eventually be able to get everything you need. So what do you do while you're here, in addition to taking classes and going outside and answering Eileen's email? Well, I hope what you're doing is you're learning about cutting edge computer science research. So you've spent years learning the basics. You will continue to learn some basics, but I think that most PhD level classes here at UMass, that means at the 600 level or higher, and most PhD level seminars, which are at the 600 or 700 level typically, will include some amount of cutting edge research. Seminars typically are about cutting edge research, and PhD level classes either are or will include that sort of toward the end after they've laid out some basics in there. I hope you take advantage of those. Please don't just take classes. Please look for seminars that are exciting and interesting for you to participate. They actually can count towards your degree, but check the web page and make sure you've got all the rules about what counts and things like. We also have, as Laura alluded to, a lot of other things going on in addition to classes. We have talks by our faculty, by our graduate students, but perhaps more importantly in some ways, talks by important scholars throughout the world. Many of them, I hope, will be in person. Some of them will, I'm sure, continue to be virtual. It's good for climate change to not have people fly here if they don't need to. So I would say that when things get going, there's pretty much an average of a talk a day. There are frequently 2 talks in any given day. You can't attend all of them, or I don't recommend you try to attend all of them. Look for ones that seem interesting to you. Look for ones that push you a little bit, so that you might go into a talk and not quite know everything that's going on, but if it's related to your interests, that will help motivate you to get up to speed. So please do attend the talks, and many of them actually come with a little bit of food at the beginning, even if it's just cookies. In addition to that, obviously, you will be dealing with research by working with your PhD advisor. Those of you who have not found a research advisor, I hope you'll be moving rapidly in that direction by exploring your possibilities with the classes that you take, with the talks you go to, obviously, but also by perhaps reading professors' papers and things like that if it seems interesting, and finding other opportunities to learn about what they're doing. I think you'll also learn a lot about research just by talking to your fellow students, particularly if you join a research group that has several students in it who are more senior than you. You may find yourself being able to learn a lot from them. I hope that that's, there's a very collaborative environment, and I hope you'll be able to take advantage of opportunities like that, as well as research internships at research companies, and so on and so forth. I think this is an exciting place to be. So, it's a little stressful in some ways, but I hope that you can see all the positives about being a PhD student here. I hope that you can land quickly and that everything works smoothly. I very much look forward to seeing you in the halls of the computer science buildings, since we're located in 2 buildings now. I hope that I'll be able to see you in the halls without masks in the not too distant future. Thanks, and have a glorious time.
Okay, I guess I am going to take over now. So I'm Andrew McGregor. I'm the GPD. Let me, I guess Laura and James didn't destroy your eyeballs with slides. Let me start destroying your eyeballs with slides. Can everyone see slides? Cool. I feel if I had a penny for every time I said that over the last year, I'd be a rich man. Okay, so as James mentioned, there are 2 main people involved in kind of running the graduate program. There's the most important one, who's Eileen, who I'm sure you've all had interactions with so far and will be talking, I think, after me. And there's myself, Andrew McGregor. I'm faculty. I am the graduate program director. So if you forget everything else from the next 45 minutes, these are really the kind of the main points I wanted to you to remember. So first of all, congratulations for being admitted. We are super selective when it comes to accepting PhD students. We looked at your applications very carefully. You all have tremendous potential to do wonderful things over the next 5 or 6 years. And some of you have already done wonderful things kind of in addition to kind of doing good courses. Some of you have probably already started doing great research. So first of all, congratulations. Second point, doing a PhD is a bit weird. It's a very unusual experience. Your friends from college may be buying houses, earning big bucks in tech companies or financial companies. You've decided to choose to spend the next 5 or 6 years building up your expertise to the point where until you're doing cutting edge research. And so the next 5-ish years will at times be an awful lot of fun. They'll sometimes be demoralizing. You'll have moments of like kind of, it's completely exhilarating, and other times where it'll be kind of like totally weird, the fodder for sitcoms. My general advice is enjoy the fun bits and find ways to push through when it's not fun, but with an important caveat, which I'll get back to. I suspect most of you know what a PhD is because you've applied for one and you've accepted a position. I think if there's one kind of point of confusion when I speak to undergraduates, however, about what a PhD is, it's the following, that doing well in a PhD is not a matter of kind of keep on getting A's for a bunch of courses and do harder and harder courses with longer and longer homeworks. I would say 80–90% of what it means to do well in your PhD is kind of publishing good cutting edge research. Sure, there's slightly more to it than that, but in my opinion, not that much. And research is, the weirdness of research is part of what makes doing a PhD weird. Research can be very frustrating. There'll be highs and lows. It can be addictive. When it goes well, you feel like you've cracked some sort of code, like kind of, it's somehow amazing that you're in a career path where when you walk, like kind of when you go for a walk and you have an idea, that can be an idea that revolutionizes the field. So sometimes there'll be those sorts of highs, but there'll be an awful lot of like kind of failure. And like if you've just spent 3 months pursuing an idea, doing a whole bunch of experiments and then realizing it doesn't work, and you think, oh, what have I achieved? So it's an emotional roller coaster. To deal with this emotional roller coaster, your friends, your advisor, your colleagues, and by which I think by colleagues, I'm counting all the other PhD students and all the faculty in the college, and various college resources such as myself and Eileen will be critical to your success. And when the going gets tough, just remember that like kind of, we accepted you into the PhD programs because we believe that you had what it took. So we believe in you, you can absolutely succeed, and we really want you to succeed. So my one caveat from above, enjoy the fun bits and find ways to push through when it's not fun, is as follows. Like, you know, there'll be some people over the next 5 or 6 years who thought they wanted to do a PhD and will realize, like, kind of in the course of like kind of doing it, that maybe this is not really what they want to do. They want to kind of leave and pursue something, kind of make the big bucks from a tech company or on Wall Street, or pursue something kind of completely unrelated to computer science. That's totally fine. That's not failure. They kind of reevaluating and changing direction in your life is sometimes really smart. Is definitely not counting as failure. Doing a PhD is a big investment. These are 5 or 6 years of your life, when they're pretty important, critical years of your life, typically in your 20s. When you're making a big investment, you owe it to yourself to ask yourself, to periodically ask yourself, is this investment right for me? So, so that's one slide. Remember this stuff. The rest of the talk, I want to talk a little bit about, let's see. What I said was the main point of the PhD, doing research and finding an advisor that will help you do that research. I then want to talk a little bit about the other stuff, and under the umbrella of other stuff, I'm talking about the kind of the courses that you'll take and the seminars and the various program requirements. So there'll be a lot of details here. You don't need to memorize them. I'm just going to kind of go through a bunch of stuff here that allows you to know what's out there, like what sort of kind of steps there are along the next 5 or 6 years, so that when they arise and you care about the details, you're not too surprised. And if there's anything that you're hearing about now for the first time and you're completely shocked, well, you can ask me or Eileen about it to find out more information. And lastly, I want to talk about the kind of a little bit the kind of the community we have here, keeping perspective during these 5 or 6 weird years of doing the PhD, and get on support, which I meant to write getting support. Okay, and I can guarantee I have not prepared slides that will address every possible question you have. So please ask questions whenever they arise. And because I'm really bad at noticing when people have their Zoom hands up, just unmute your mic and just talk. Like, I think there's only kind of 20, 30 of us, so that'd be totally fine. So if you want to interrupt, totally fine. That's probably the best way. So getting involved in research. So the exact percentage is somewhat arbitrary, but I'd say research is like kind of 80% plus of what it means to get your research, get your PhD. And almost all the research you do will be kind of done in collaboration with faculty. So faculty and students working together. Sometimes students kind of have papers with other students. That tends to be more rare. This kind of faculty-student kind of collaboration is really where it's at. And the most natural way for this to happen is via your, that you will work with a research advisor who will help kind of give you advice, kind of help you find good research problems, they kind of give you kind of feedback. This is your top priority for the first year. Like, kind of, sure, pass some courses, get some decent grades, but without fail, make sure you have that you found a good research advisor or research group as soon as possible, and certainly within the first year. So the main reason is just because this is going to be the person you're going to be collaborating with most over the next 5-6 years. There's some logistical reasons why you'll need an advisor as soon as possible. One of the major intermediate steps towards the PhD is passing what we call portfolio. This is the candidacy exam in the college, and I'll talk more about that in the middle part of the talk. And then proposing and defending your thesis requires you to have an advisor. And there was one question beforehand about what's a thesis? Well, a thesis is basically the document you produce. Most theses tend to be between 100 and 200 pages in computer science. Sometimes they're a bit less, depending on the area. I worry about ones which are a bit longer. So the process of getting your PhD is producing this document and presenting this document. That requires having an advisor. And also, almost the only way to get research funding, to become a research assistant is via an advisor who's applying for kind of government grants and using those government grants to support his or her students. Okay, the good news is you've already been assigned an advisor. Some of these people will be your advisor for the next 5 or 6 years. Sometimes some people will be accepted into the PhD program because they have exceptional promise, but the one that's kind of an immediate faculty-student match, so in which case you've been assigned a temporary advisor, and you're going to work with that temporary advisor towards kind of finding a more permanent research advisor who will end up being your advisor for your thesis and dissertation. We really try our hardest at UMass in the college to give students flexibility. So there are various reasons why kind of an advisor-advisee relationship might not work out. People's interests may change. Someone's advising style might not be a perfect fit. You can absolutely switch advisors at any time. Like, all you need is that the new advisor is willing to take on students, and you in particular. And one thing you'll learn, if you haven't already learned it through your undergraduate, is as a faculty member, we tend to talk a lot. So you'll probably find almost everyone in the department, any faculty member in the department will be willing to talk at length about their research and coursework and whatever you need. So, so bear this in mind when things come up. Okay, so if you've assigned a temporary advisor, one of your goals is to find that permanent advisor. And if your permanent advisor or what you thought was a permanent advisor right now doesn't work out for whatever reason, in both these situations, you'll find yourself looking for a new research advisor or maybe a research topic. General guidelines for this is, one, kind of talk to other students in other labs, talk to faculty about their research interests, go to these talks by visiting speakers that James was mentioning. Through this process, you'll get a lot of you'll get a lot of information about kind of interesting topics out there. And typically, if you found a topic that's guiding you towards a specific person in the department, that could be your advisor. And I guess one thing that's it's a huge commitment on both your part and the advisor's part to form these kind of advisor relationships. So do take it seriously. Of course you can take it seriously. I guess the one point I wanted to mention is that different advisors that are out there in the department have obviously they have different areas of expertise. They can go to any kind of top CS university, and like almost every faculty member is an expert, is a top 5 expert in some particular area. It might be quite narrow, but we all have our areas of different expertise. So this is going to play a large part in kind of who you want to work with. But more kind of, and a more subtle point is that kind of different faculty members will have different kind of advising or managerial styles. Some of them will be kind of wanting to meet frequently, will be in constant email contact with you, will be kind of high energy. Other faculty members will be much more kind of hands off, like let you dictate the pace. One thing, like kind of my experience as a PhD student was my official advisor was quite a kind of senior, kind of very calm, kind of a cool guy. I liked him a lot, but he was very calm, very serious. But then I also ended up working with a new member of faculty who drank an obscene amount of espresso, and like we'd work crazy hours, and I benefited from a range from that contrast. Like there's no right advising style that works for all students. It's about finding the advising style that will work for you. And also kind of faculty will have like kind of different strengths and weaknesses. Like kind of some might be, different strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so as I say, priority, find that advisor, find that research group. Definitely do that by next summer. So it's I would say top priority for the first year. You can switch group at any times. If you are looking to switch advisor or move from a temporary advisor to a permanent advisor, one thing that people do with great success is consider doing an independent study with that new faculty member to pilot that advising relationship, to kind of work out whether these two people work well together. As I said, research funding in computer science almost always comes via the advisor, because they're the ones who can write in the grants, the National Science Foundation or the NIH or whoever. If you're not funded, so I'd say most students are funded as research assistants. It depends somewhat on the area. Like if some areas, like there's more government funding for. So if you pick an area, if your research interests are aligned with something that the US government cares about, there's a lot more funding and there's a lot more opportunities for hiring RAs. If you have a more kind of specific, narrow, esoteric research interest, maybe there's less funding in that, but you can still be funded as a teaching assistant. So there are many kind of great PhD students who have, I think almost all PhD students have done at least some TAing. Some PhD students, depending on the area, have done a lot of TAing. So TAs, teaching assistants, work closely with faculty and are involved in this kind of teaching of undergraduate and graduate courses. So yeah, I'm talking a lot. Is there any questions so far? Oh, I see chat questions. Okay. Oh, let's just go through some questions. Okay, so Juan said, when you say the thesis corresponds to greater or equal to 4 papers, what's the metric? Effort, length, content, or all of the above? Well, I want to say 4-ish, and I want the ish to be bigger than 4, in the sense that if you prove P equals NP, that maybe will be a single paper, but that's going to get your PhD thesis. If you are a first student author on 3 papers in some super selective conference, or maybe even 2 papers, that could be enough. Some people's thesis ends up being kind of 5 or 6, corresponds to 5 or 6 papers, because maybe the papers, they only did a certain part of the paper, maybe the paper's been carved up. Like all these, like I went back and forth whether I should even mention the 4 number. Like that's a super rough idea, a super kind of rough number to throw out. It really depends on the area, the size of those papers, the effort, length, and content of those papers. So So I hope that answers Juan's question. Next question, is there a mailing list we should join to keep up with upcoming talks and seminars? Yes, there is. There's a seminars mailing list. I think you might already be on it, and Eileen is nodding her head. So great, that's taken care of. Oh, sorry, actually, sorry, Elizabeth already took care of that. And oh, next question was actually answering Juan's question. I'll just read it out for the sake of everybody. In Will's experience, reading his advisor's dissertation is that they seem to be basically the intellectual content of a few papers with some extra editing and content, not quite literally pasting the papers together, but also not far from that. Someone else correct him if it's wrong. I'm not going to correct you. That is, it depends on the area. It depends on the advisor. But I would say 7 out of the 8 or 6 out of 7 PhD theses, I've been the advisor, like the number of chapters has corresponded to each chapter has corresponded to a paper, and there's some sort of like common framework. There's maybe a new introduction written tying it all together, like all the stuff you've realized about the body of work subsequent to submitting it to a conference 2 or 3 years ago. Okay, can I take a linguistics class towards your degree? Yes, there's some specific courses that are pre-approved. It's on the website. We try and be as flexible as possible. Okay, I'll get to courses in a second. How do co-advisors work? It's like having an advisor, but you have 2 of them, and I don't think that there's no real. I've co-advised a couple of students. They basically both arose because the students had interests that intersected with both our areas of expertise. But there's no big differences in terms of the various steps of doing the PhD, the candidacy exam, the defense, and the proposal and stuff like that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about courses, and I've now got the chat window open, so I'll see chat questions as they come up. But as I say, also feel free absolutely just to interrupt me. I have 2 small kids. I'm used to being interrupted. So. Okay, so what will you be doing over the next few years? Well, as I suggested, research, research, research. But on the way, you'll be taking a bunch of courses. And if you're an MS PhD student, you'll be doing these courses, and a master's project, which again, I'll talk about, will lead you to be getting a master's degree as a kind of stepping stone towards getting the PhD. You'll be preparing a portfolio, which I'll talk about. It's basically, the portfolio is going to be something you do in your 5th or 6th semester, where you finished up some kind of a research project called the synthesis project, and again I'll talk about this shortly, along with a bunch of courses, and you've got some letters of support from some faculty members. Feel free to take notes on all these slides, but these slides themselves will be posted, so don't feel compelled to take notes. Then, as time goes on, roughly in your 3rd, 4th, 5th year, you'll be proposing, writing, and defending a thesis. This document you produce typically has 2 presentations that go along before it, one about 2 or 3 years before you finish, where you say what you're going to do, you then go and do it, and then there's a defense, which is another kind of talk where you present to the faculty, to your advisor, and the people on your committee, and maybe other students and friends, what you've done. You'll also be finding a job, and that will occupy quite a lot of your thoughts in your final year. You might also be doing internships, depending on your area. Internships can be a kind of research internships. I definitely can focus on doing research internships. Can be a great way to get extra experience in research areas which are maybe related to, but not exactly the same as what you're doing during the year. And and they also tend to be very well paid. So internships is something else I should have also added to this list. So, okay, so one of the things in this portfolio I mentioned was you have to do a bunch of courses. In particular, we pay specific attention to what we call core courses. These are kind of courses that we think are are not too narrow and maybe not focused on cutting edge research, but basically topics that a well-rounded PhD student should know. So there's actually a range of possible courses. You don't need to take them all. We've grouped them as best we can into three main areas. One's related to systems, one's related to kind of algorithms and theory, and one's related to AI. Now, of course, it's not always a perfect dividing line. And the goal we have in insisting that you take some of these core courses is to develop a comprehensive mastery of the subject matter. So kind of, you can do it now, but probably best to do it afterwards. Like kind of our webpage, one of our web pages has a lot of details about these core requirements. Typically, well, if you look at my third bullet points, you need kind of at least one course from each of the at least one course from each core area. So one course from theory, one course from AI, one course from systems, plus 3 more. So overall, you need to take these 6 core courses, and you need to get a B+ or better in each of them. And as an MS PhD student, you also need kind of 30 credits in total, where a course is typically 3 credits, but then when you're kind of focused on your dissertation, you can be there can be credits associated with that. So I think it's incredibly rare that the requirements that we have for the MS PhD or indeed the PhD program about the number of credits you take actually arise as a concern. This is just something that automatically happens. So you need to take these 6 courses. Once you've taken these 6 courses and you've taken a bunch of other courses that you're interested in that are relevant to your research, you're typically getting up there in terms of the number of credits. You also need to do a 6-credit master's course, which I'll get to in a second. Okay. Okay. Some people may have been admitted into the PhD only track. This is slightly different. It's basically designed if you've already taken a master's, and so it's kind of somewhat pointless for you to get a second master's. So the only real difference here is there's less course credits you need. But as I say, the course credits in practice, like, if your focus is like, once you've taken the course, like these 6 core courses and some courses that appeal to you because they're relevant to your research, the course credits typically take care of themselves. So the only real difference for the PhD only track rather than the MS PhD progress track, there's 18 credits versus 30 credits. It's not really something that makes a big difference in my experience. Okay, so you can also see the webpage about that. Okay. Okay, fantastic. There's a question on there's a couple of questions on the chat, which I'm going to get to explicitly in, I think, 2 slides time. So I've seen your question. Oh, well, okay. So the question, for PhD only course requirements, does it mean a PhD will only take core courses? What about seminars? Like that 18 credit is a lower bound. Like, you can take as many extra courses as you want. And definitely if there's seminars relevant to your research area, I would absolutely take them. Okay. So these, so there's 2 types of requirements there for these 2 tracks. There was the kind of taking at least 1 course, or to taking those 6 core courses, so at least 1 from each area, and those number of credits. Now, in terms of the core courses, that you need to have at least 1 from each area, this is something that is possible to waive under some circumstances. Like, basically, if you've just like, been at the University of X and you've taken an advanced level algorithms course, we don't want you to waste your time by coming to UMass for your PhD and taking a similar course. So the waivers are to try and avoid that. So if that applies to you, on the website, you'll find links to a waiver form that you can download, and you can request waivers for certain courses. And so typically you'll need to provide the syllabus, maybe kind of talk to the instructor of the course here, and he or she may endorse or not your waiver request. And then ultimately, it's my fun job of having the final say and saying, should such and such course be waived? One possible confusion is that when you get a course waived, this does not count towards the number of credits. If you need to take these kind of 18 credits or 30 credits, it does not kind of address that component of the requirements, just the core, just the number of core courses you need to take. Okay. Great. Okay, so in terms of these courses, like kind of, as I say, you like ultimately success in the PhD means success in making progress in research, and your immediate goal, as I said, find that research advisor which is the good fit for your interest and personality, etc. And so I think that there's two things I want to say related to that. Is what regarding the courses. One, don't find yourself sweating every conceivable minutes, like kind of trying to kind of ace your grades in those core courses. Like you just need to get a B+. Kind of ultimately, I would much prefer one of my students like kind of didn't get the A, got the B+, and got a paper out over that first year or first 2 years, then ends up with a beautiful 4.0 like kind of GPA for their graduate work. The flip side is definitely make progress on these core courses. Like kind of don't try and shove them all, don't try and get them all done in the first semester, but make methodical progress. Like kind of basically kind of every semester, try and be ticking off one, maybe two, depends on your specific circumstances, kind of courses to kind of tick off these requirements for the MS, PhD, or the PhD track. Because one thing worth bearing in mind is that some of these core courses are graduate level and maybe substantially more work than the undergraduate courses you've taken. Again, don't do too many kind of core courses at the same time, because if they're work intensive, if you're also a research assistant or teaching assistant, you don't have the same time to spend on the same number of courses you did as an undergraduate. Okay, and then kind of related to some of the IPO questions and the minimum credit requirement is Eileen can correct me if I'm wrong, but like we can certify you as a full-time student and kind of like ticking the the International Programs Office and any other requirements, as long as you're taking kind of 6 credits, sometimes even 3, depending on the particulars, because of these other responsibilities you're doing, these kind of teaching assistants and research assistants and stuff like that. So IPO and visa rules. I was an international student when I was doing my PhD at UPenn. Like kind of, there's some things you need to care about, kind of, but in terms of the credits, especially early on during the PhD, normally that takes care of itself. Okay, portfolio. I guess I promised to talk about later, but then already told you a little bit about. So the portfolio is this kind of midpoint of your PhD, which is not exactly in the middle. It's what some other universities call a PhD candidacy exam. Basically, prior to doing the portfolio, the whole department is looking out for you and kind of like checking in, like kind of, are you doing enough courses? Have you found an advisor? Like kind of, and then post-portfolio, like the portfolio process is the point where we say, where you put together some kind of documentation, you have a track record now at UMass, and we can look at that and say, okay, this person, she or he definitely knows what they're doing. They've got this kind of established relationship with this advisor. we can now give them a little bit more freedom. They might be taking dissertation writing credits, which are like kind of less micromanaged than like courses. And so passing portfolio happens typically in your third year, when you've passed 4 of the 6 courses. You get these 3 short letters of support from various faculty in the department, including your advisor, kind of them saying that they're willing to advise you, kind of if they're making that commitment, and that you've completed a synthesis or a research project, which we have this rather mysterious name, a synthesis project, which I'll come to in a slide. So portfolio is something you kind of submit, I think, in your 5th semester, and it's that kind of midway point that you kind of your first 2 years are leading up to. Okay, all the time you're doing kind of research, and like kind of especially in the synthesis research project is part of that research track record you're establishing. Most students who come up for a portfolio will have a kind of maybe a publication by that point, but there are exceptions. Like kind of one of my students, like kind of who I consider to be doing very well, actually, for a variety of reasons, last year came up for a portfolio without a publication. So depends on the area, depends on backstory, but that's portfolio. So again, there's a web link. Kind of basically there's a tremendous amount of information that kind of Eileen has done a wonderful job of putting together on the web page. So when it comes to specifics, web page are a great resource. Okay, how am I doing for time? Okay. So what's the synthesis project? So the synthesis project is typically a 2-semester long project that you do that synthesizes 2 different areas. Now, in practice, what this means is that you work with 2 people on it. There's 2 advisors, like kind of, or there's 2, we call them readers. One is probably going to be your PhD advisor, who's hopefully locked in by that point. And the other one is someone who maybe works in a slightly different area than your PhD advisor. Could even be in a different department. Like if someone was asking about linguistics earlier, so it could even be someone from linguistics. Sorry, I didn't mean to phrase that as if linguistics was the diametrically opposed research area from CS. Like, could be kind of anyone across the university, or indeed sometimes it's people kind of from beyond the university. So this is a research project where, like, kind of ideally it would be kind of a research problem that you identify through discussions with your advisor, maybe the second reader, that kind of like has components from multiple research areas, and ideally it would lead to a publication. I'd say it's maybe 50-50 about how many synthesis projects lead to publications. One common pitfall, or one common stumbling block that people hit early on is maybe they don't start on the synthesis project as soon as they do. We really try and get all the portfolio done by the end of the 3rd semester. We really want to be able to sign off on you as individuals, saying, you know what you're doing at this point. Like all this box ticking stuff is behind us, and now you can focus on changing the world with your research. So we get a bit nervous when people when portfolios and synthesis projects start delayed. We start to worry, is such and such a student and their advisor really clicking what's happening? So really try and keep to this idea of getting the portfolio out of the way by the end of the 3rd year. And an important part of this is don't delay starting the synthesis project. Okay, so I mentioned a synthesis project, and I also kind of alluded to a master's project kind of earlier, that one of the things you'll be doing in the MS PhD track is getting a master's project. The master's project happens to also be a 2-semester project, suspiciously similar to the 2 semesters that would be required for the synthesis project. It also has 2 readers. So why are we asking you to do this, like kind of the master's project and the synthesis project? Well, in truth, we're not. Like kind of what happens almost all the time is that people in the MS PhD track, at least, do like the MS project and the synthesis project are the same thing. Like so the synthesis project, you'll register for credits as if it was a master's project. You'll work with these two faculty members. You'll get these each of the semesters you're working on it, that'll be equivalent to a 3-credit course. You'll get your 6 credits, and you've ticked the boxes of both getting the master's project that allows you to get your master's degree as a stepping stone towards your PhD degree, and you've completed the synthesis project, which is allowing you to make progress on passing portfolio. If you're PhD only, you still need to do a synthesis project. You don't need to do a master's project. What you do in practice, I think, ends up just being the same, though. You could sign up for 6 credits of independent study while you're doing your synthesis project. Okay, so I see a question in the chat. How many attempts do you get at passing your portfolio? Well, I guess first indirect answer is we're not looking for reasons to kick you out of the program. A question, an answer more specific to passing portfolio is that you should probably only go up to, if you go up for portfolio, if you put together this material, it should be with the expectation that you and your advisor think you're going to pass. The faculty and the graduate program committee meet when they review all the stuff, that we put a big pass stamp on it. What sometimes happens, and it can happen for a variety of reasons, is people need to defer. And if you need to defer 1 semester, for the portfolio, not really a big deal. But if you have to defer 2 semesters, they really get quite worried. Like the GPD will meet with your advisor, just checking what's going on. And they're perfectly life hits you with random stuff. Who's to know? Maybe in 2020 there'll be a pandemic and everyone's life will be thrown up into the air. Stuff happens, and so when it comes to the rules that the college has, we always look for reasons to be compassionate and try and help you overcome what obstacles you are encountering. The main reason we actually have for rules is that we don't want people to struggle under the radar. A lot of the rules we have about deadlines for the portfolio is more that if a student is not coming to us and saying he or she has this problem, or an advisor is not coming to us, the college, and in this case maybe Eileen and myself, won't know there's a problem. So we have these various deadlines for when you should submit the portfolio, as much a reason for us to realize when there's problems and when we can help, rather than looking for reasons to trip people up or remove people from the program. So that wasn't a too long-winded answer. Okay, Dewal says, so is the synthesis project going to be part of the thesis, or can it be highlighted to your thesis? In which case, how is it different from your thesis proposal for only PhD candidates? Some people's synthesis projects grow organically into their thesis. They realize that the initial project they do, hey, there's maybe a rich set of questions that you can ask as follow-up questions, and that could end up being the basis for the proposal. And then the synthesis project itself is something you can accomplish in just 2 semesters. So the thesis is going to be a much bigger thing, but the synthesis could be the seed that grows into that thesis. I don't have numbers, but maybe that occurs, I don't know, a fifth of the time, a third of the time. For some people, it can be something that's completely different to their thesis. For example, maybe a student working in theory could end up doing a much more applied project about like, this was the case with one of my students. So I work in algorithms and theory, but one of my students did a synthesis project that was in between theory and networking. And a lot of what he was doing was much more kind of practical kind of networking system sort of stuff. And that ends up being a component of his thesis, but maybe not the most representative part of his thesis. So people do different things. Like sometimes it's totally different from the broad research area of the students. Sometimes it's in the same research area. It's still maybe a kind of quite a theory mathematical thing in the case of my students. And then sometimes it's actually directly related to what will become the thesis. Did I say earlier that sometimes faculty like to talk and give long answers? Because I guess I've been guilty of that. Okay. So again, this is the next two slides. It's just like, our kind of impressionistic slides to kind of give you a kind of rough sense for like how this might pan out to be a 5 or 5.5 year kind of, I was about to say ordeal, I mean experience. That's down the side, there's kind of 1 to 11 is indexing semesters, and maybe in the first semester you're basically just getting kind of taking up one of those cores, maybe a non-core course. Second semester, another core, and then maybe an advanced seminar or something. And also you're ensuring that you've joined a research group. Fourth semester, you'll be starting this kind of synthesis/MS project. And the fifth semester, you'll be finishing off this synthesis project. By that point, you'll have already done enough of these at least 4 of these core courses, and you'll be submitting your portfolio. Maybe in the 6th semester, maybe there's 1 more core course to finish off. 7th semester, you'll now complete your MS degree, you've got enough credits, and you'll be also proposing your dissertation. And then for the next kind of 3 semesters, you'll be working on your dissertation, working, publishing, becoming famous, etc. Then you'll be defending your dissertation. So this is just as a rough guideline for like kind of what you should expect. For if you're on a PhD or any plan, it's just kind of shrunk a little bit. You might be submitting your portfolio kind of 1 semester earlier, and the proposal and defense might be kind of 1 semester earlier. But yeah, they kind of very, very few students finish their PhD in under 5 years. And maybe the average is more like 6. One advice that I will probably, if I'm still GPD in 5 years, like I'll probably give you is that try and finish in 5 and 6, but also bear in mind when it comes to the job markets, like when it comes to kind of applying for faculty jobs or applying for jobs in research labs and tech companies, no one pays that much attention to how long you were in the PhD program. But if you find yourself spending too long in the PhD program, maybe something's gone wrong. But this is not advice I need to tell you guys now, but maybe in 5 years' time, remind me to tell you that. Okay, so if you're in the MS PhD track and you realize that maybe you could be in the PhD track and you care about it sufficiently, a sufficient amount to change, we can totally make that happen. So I guess like there's a form you can fill out. And so talk to Island and myself. I personally don't think it really matters, but maybe it matters to you for some reason, or maybe there's some aspect which I haven't thought about. Okay, two other kind of requirements of the program. One of them is academic honesty. This is something I'm sure you've heard enough about as undergraduates, like about like kind of no cheating, kind of always make sure your work is your own work. It was important then, it's even more important now, because like you're now at the point where you're in, whether you like it or not, whether you've been told or not, you're now embarking on your research career. And really, if people can't trust you as a researcher, then it's really hard for anyone to pay attention to anything you do. Because if you report experimental data, but there's this kind of concern, hey, is this the person who fabricated some data last year? Like, no one's going to pay attention to your papers. So academic honesty is important because it's being honest is the right thing to do, but it's just super important because you're now approaching the point where you're going to, like, the PhD program is going to leading you to the point when you can be kind of independent researchers, respected because of your track record. You need to get that track record like sparkling and like, without a whiff of scandal or anything like that. So concretely, yeah, just all the coursework, make sure everything you hand in is your own work, kind of is consistent with syllabus expectations. Like, collaborate if collaboration is required. That's a great thing to do. I'm big on collaboration. If collaboration is not required, well, don't collaborate. Make sure, like, kind of, like, you can always ask instructors, like, kind of what's allowed, what's not. They're very happy to talk and clarify these things. When it comes to research, everything you present should be yours. You may have done it. Well, typically you've done it in collaboration with other people. You've got to make sure those collaborations are clear. They kind of, if there's components of your paper that's heavily related to work by others from other universities, make sure it's appropriately cited. Make sure you're not trying to pass off someone else's, or inadvertently trying to, like, kind of make it sound as if something you're contributing or something that is really from another person, from another institution. Make sure it doesn't, like, it doesn't sound as if you're claiming that's your contribution. So, not surprisingly, that the university has a bunch of policies about academic honesty. They obviously care about it as an institution. They will not tolerate, they will not tolerate cheating, plagiarism. But it's just, I think the most direct things to say is, like, when you're embarking on a research career, you just need to keep your track record, like, beautiful and shiny. Okay, academic honesty. So professional behavior is another kind of general requirement of all our students. So as Laura said, we're really committed to building this kind of actively inclusive college climate. We want everyone like, kind of in the kind of college family to kind of to be safe and to feel safe and welcome. So we definitely just do not tolerate any of the things that you don't think we should tolerate, like, kind of any discrimination, assault, harassment, threats, intimidation, profiling, coercion based on membership or perceived members in a particular racist, religious, gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation group. Sorry, I just had to move a window. Nor based anything based on color, national origin, disability, or veteran status. Like, kind of, you are here to do amazing things. We don't want anything to get in the way of that. Like, you know, we want this to be the place where you can get your best work done. And so, like, if anything comes up along those lines, we want to know about it. We want to fix that problem. So Eileen and I are here to navigate any of this and resolve concerns. We also have, like, some other wonderful staff members, which I'm not sure if you've met yet, Emma and Erica from the diversity office. Like, seriously, anything along these lines that arises, we want to fix it. Like, kind of, just, yeah. Okay, let's finish up because I've probably talked way too long. Okay, so I told you it was doing a PhD is a bit unusual. When you're finding yourself confronted by unusual things, don't try and navigate all these problems or all these issues that come up kind of by yourself. Like, kind of the friendships I had with kind of other students in my PhD program were super important when, like, kind of, if I just spent, if 2 years of work research had come crashing down at some point, and the advice and the perspective I'd get from my advisor was super important. Various staff at the PhD program I was in, like, again, was, like, kind of really helped me. There will be times when it's a bit of a struggle. You're not quite sure what's going on. You're not quite sure, like, kind of, kind of how to kind of navigate various obstacles. Yeah, faculty, friends, like, kind of, the college in general, we're all here to help. And there's a whole bunch of university resources on top of that. Yeah, so James has already mentioned, like, kind of, for reasons better or worse, we are still an email-based, like, kind of organization. So you'll see a bunch of important emails going back and forth. especially Eileen's emails are super important. Whenever I get an email from Eileen, I jump to it to respond. I encourage you to do the same. A bunch of useful kind of seminars, recommend you kind of make use of those. Both seminars which are kind of offered, which will be directly advertised from KICS, but also from the graduate school. In terms of various policies, in terms of course requirements, the website, as I mentioned, is a great resource. Something which I think is fairly obvious, but this maybe it trips up a few people every year. You've all, like, to be admitted here, like, we thought you were doing amazing at your undergraduate or your master's. But doing amazing, kind of being a good student in undergraduate masters is a slightly different thing, well, actually a very different thing from being kind of like excelling in your PhD program. So in the past, you just signed up for a course, you did what the instructor says, you put in the hours, you try to get an A, you repeat it. And that was the recipe for success. So research is not like that. And as I said, research is the majority of what you're doing now. There's a heck of a lot of failure, like kind of when you kind of think you have the proof that works, that's kind of, and then you realize there's some fundamental flaw, or you thought you had kind of, you thought you had this kind of tweak to some sort of routing protocol and some network problem that you thought was going to make a tremendous difference, but it took many, many hours to code, and then you realize it doesn't. It's just incredibly important to be just to be able to kind of bounce back from those failures and just to accept that, like, failures is a natural part of research. I personally found, like, one of the cool things about research, especially maybe more theoretical work, is sometimes, like, you can have that idea that leads to the paper or that leads to success in the remaining in the other 50% of the time, sometimes in the remaining 10% of the time. Like, I think when I did the PhD, I think I could kind of pinpoint those specific days when the gem of the idea occurred to me that led to success. Now, that only happens because, like, it might feel like it's magical when you make progress, but in truth, that only happened because on the days when, like, bad news hit, when, like, fundamental flaws arose in proofs or what have you, like, you just need to kind of get back on the horse or the saddle or whatever the expression is, and just keep making progress. Okay, keep reading papers, trying to understand why things went wrong, trying to kind of if one particular kind of direction is just really not panning out, like, try and make a wise decision about when it makes sense to keep on pushing, because maybe it's hard, but maybe you'll get there. And when it makes sense to skip to a different, like, kind of research question or a different direction or different path. Okay, so get ready for some failure. Don't get too bummed by it. Just keep on going and enjoy most when things pan out. Yeah, if you have enough ideas, if only 1 in 10, if you have 10 ideas and 1 in 10 works, you still have one good idea, and that's ultimately what matters, not your ratio of good to bad ideas when it comes to research. So naturally, this involves resilience, ability to learn from regular failure, like, working out, like, well, when something doesn't work, how will I make it work in the future, yeah, well, when things aren't going well, you need to rely on that support system. That's, like, I really hope that you're kind of building up. As I said, I was an international student when I was at UPenn. I hung around with a lot of other international students. It's kind of a bit weird being an international student because, like, you maybe don't have family in the country. You find yourself in a city or a town or a culture that maybe does things slightly different. So even more so in that case, it was like just prioritizing building up the support system, which is kind of fun because it means, like, hanging around with friends and practice. But I would totally recommend that. Okay, sorry, these slides are going way too long. Okay, and I think this is actually repeating points I made. Some stages will be challenging. kind of finding that topic, kind of maybe your friends were already kind of found, maybe they came in knowing exactly what they wanted to do, and they're doing it, and you're thinking, hey, I don't even know what I want to do, and they kind of, and you're just looking over your shoulder at your peers and thinking, oh, why isn't my research as sorted as person X, or like they got their like a top journal paper, and like why haven't I? But these are all things that kind of come with time. Just make sure you're kind of working, connecting with and working, and how to just have a general healthy relationship with your advisor. And you're kind of he or she is giving clear communication and feedback that's helpful to you. Over time, you'll get better at research. Like, you know, like maybe early on, you'll waste your time going down going down too many rabbit holes. You'll get better at that. Maybe early on, you'll find it harder to unpeel your eyeballs from phones and computers and things you shouldn't be doing. But as you get more into research projects, I kind of you'll get addicted to it, and you'll kind of find it easy not to get distracted. You know, all these things are like kind of things you'll as time goes on, you'll know more stuff because you'll read more papers, gone to more talks, but also B, you'll just become better at all the kind of life skills that will make you a successful researcher. Okay, PhD method, you supply all the ideas. A big component of research is coming up with kind of cool ideas that no one in the world has had before. But this is not something that, but I say magic, but it really shouldn't be magic. Like kind of a lot of these ideas will come from talks, like will come from your advisor, and that your work will, especially initially, be about taking those ideas and making them actually, like your advisor has a hunch that some theorem is true, but in terms of actually making it true, actually doing the research, that's where you'll kind of come in. Or your advisor will have an idea for some system that needs to be built. And like maybe initially it's a bit of grunt work, kind of building that system, but then as you start to understand the system, you'll start contributing, thinking, well, if we just tweak this thing, and we added some random widgets, like, you know, like the magic of where ideas come is really much more organic in practice. Now, if any of you are coming from Europe, you might be used to a system where, as I was, that I thought like a PhD program was like you turn up, you get handed your topic, you go away and work for 3 years on that one problem. I think even in the UK and Britain, it's not really quite that anymore. Maybe it used to be, but it's certainly not here. Like view maybe the PhD is more an apprenticeship. That's, I don't know, whether or not you kind of end up seeing your advisor as some sort of wizardy figure, I don't know. But the idea is that kind of over time, they will like kind of like a whole bunch of this kind of secrets of how to do research, kind of how to publish papers will be revealed to you until you can end up being able to do novel research that is worth publishing in top conferences and journals. Okay. Okay, almost there. One thing I think that I certainly lacked when I was a PhD student in computer science was the ability to write well, and that's an incredibly large skill, both because if you want to kind of convince people to accept your papers, they need to be kind of well-written papers. So the writing needs to be clear, but also needs to be kind of compelling and make people interested in what you do. And if you're writing about some obtuse mathematical formula, like I found myself doing, convincing people to read it is a significant component to the challenge. So we actually do have a fantastic kind of writing center that's led by Justin O'Bara and Siobhan May, which will give you kind of Zoom consultations about like all sorts of academic, professional, and technical writing. So these guys will help you with conference and journal papers, grant proposal, fellowship applications, statements of purposes, like throughout the entire pipeline, like, whether it's just brainstorming ideas about like not the technical ideas, but like how you should format the paper, what's the narrative, and like how you should tailor it for different audiences. So as I say, these slides will be posted, so don't feel the need to write down addresses, but like if you want to schedule a consultation, there's your email address. Things are a little bit in flux still about like with the pandemic and Zoom and versus Zoom in person, etc. There are set hours currently, but definitely email Justin ahead of time to try and kind of set things up that would work with both of your schedules. There's also a writing course. It uses a kind of workshop format to focus on structure and phrasing while engaging students in a process-based approach to writing. I can tell I didn't write that sentence. So this is another great resource that's helps you to write through a kind of course-based format. One thing you'll probably be doing in the first 2 years, if you're a US citizen or a green card holder, is applying for NSF graduate research fellowships. This is a different way to get research funding other than being tied to a specific project through your advisor. The graduate school has like great seminars and supports to help write these things. So as I say, don't do this alone, connect with students, staff, faculty. Maybe in undergraduate, you were the sort of individual who pulled all-nighters for essays and what have you. That doesn't really work so well in grad school. It's more of a marathon rather than multiple sprints. There's no end of semester where magically all the courses you've done, or all the things you've been working on that semester are now done. Research basically builds up all the time. You're learning more and more. It's always with you. Sometimes if you want to you want to work with whatever you want to adopt the work practices that work for you. And so for me, sometimes I did pull some all-nighters, but more often it was building up the kind of good habits of staying focused on research, keep on reading papers rather than mad all-nighters for paper deadlines. As James said, Massachusetts is really, well, I know. It's one of the things when you speak to faculty, they'll always say how great Amherst and Massachusetts is, unsurprisingly, because they chose to live here rather than go to some other university. But I think it legitimately is a really nice place. I really like the area. It's a really beautiful area. As you especially when you talk to students who've been here for a few years, you'll find about more cool things to do and see. Okay, so finally time for questions, for any other additional questions, but a brief summary. Yeah, you're doing fantastically well to be accepted. Congratulations. I'm so glad you're here. You will do awesome stuff. Bear in mind, the PhD is not easy though. So make sure your expectations are realistic. It will not be a walk in the park, but we absolutely believe you can do great things. And we will do everything we can to help you with that. These slides will be posted. Absolutely email myself and or Eileen or both of us if you're not quite sure who best to ask, questions that arise directly directly from talks today, but also just throughout your the next 5 or 6 years. Okay, I'm sorry I talked so much. Are there any questions? Okay, I guess there's no questions. I probably have literally talked too much and you want someone else to speak. Let's see, I've just got, Ming asks, is it allowed to transfer core credit from my UMass master program Eileen, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is it can certainly be used as a waiver for a core course. In terms of transferring credits, I think that's only going to be possible if it was not credits that you needed for the UMass Master's course.
I can clarify that.
Okay. Eileen will clarify it kind of, I guess, after this. Oh.
I can clarify that for everyone. For students who earned the master's degree here, those credits are not able to be transferred to the PhD. For students that earned a master's degree elsewhere, they also cannot transfer credits into the PhD program. That is a university policy. You need to earn these 18 credits at UMass. But as Andrew stated, you can apply for the core waiver, which would just get you out of a certain area, but not credits.
Okay, thanks very much, Eileen. Okay, well, unless there's any other questions, let me turn this over to Eileen, and I guess you can take it from here, Eileen. Oh, you're still muted.
Thank you, Andrew. We're going to actually have Terry Kellogg join us from CSCF and explain all the wonderful things that I don't know much about. And she works with all of the technical staff. So you all really need to get to know what CSCF does. Terry?
Yes, I'm right here. If I can grab the screen, Andrew.
Yep.
So my name is Terry Kellogg, like Eileen just mentioned. I'm just wanting to give you an overview of what we're here to do. As Andrew pointed out, we would like to also help you do awesome things here at UMass. So what we're going to try to do is, like I said, just a little bit of an overview. You don't have to memorize any of it. If you take away anything right here, I'd love for you to know the address system@cs.umass.edu. That's like one of the best places that we can help you, help yourself, but also help you get the answers you need. So I'm part of the group called in the Computer Science Computing Facility. So it's CSCF. We're part of a staff. We have to do hardware, software, and facilities support. So it is important for you to, like I say, have access to the things you need. The section here that I want to talk about are your support info, accounts, email, space, keys, and access. A lot of you have already gotten access to some of the spaces you need, and some of you haven't. So the important things are the services we provide, but also the people are listed here. The difference between the computer science account and the campus account, that's going to be the first piece that's confusing. So you will have an @UMass identity and also a CICS or CS is the same thing account. So keeping those two clear is number one, and when to use the different accounts. And also we are located in the computer science building as well as LGRC, but the computer science location that the CSCF is located is room 120. It goes through the dean's office, room 126. You have to enter through the room 120. We're there from Monday through Friday. The ticketing system I mentioned, if you could try to be as descriptive as possible, it's really helpful for you to tell us, you know, I've never done this before, I need help with something, or it stopped working. But your faculty will have to request accounts on given systems. So we talked about the accounts being the public account for CICS, any groups that you might be working with or for, and then also the EdLab is another account, and then your Spire/NetID. So again, those are confusing because there's lots of accounts, but it is important that you know which one to use when. So I'm calling this CICS ID just to keep it different from the campus NetID. And that is generally used for accessing things, and we only ask for your username, so it's the first part of your name. This semester, and then for the last couple of years, we have made the username the same as your net ID so that we can reduce the confusion. So that is hopefully helpful, but it also makes you realize that your password could be different. And so you need to set them the same. And if you set them the same, you won't have an issue. It's when you go to change them later. So again, I can't stress that enough, but it's really important that, you know, if you need help figuring out how to get in, we can help do that. Your UMass net ID is again, username @UMass. So whenever you see the @UMass, that's going to trigger you to think, oh, that's my UMass credentials. Your PhD students, which you all are, we set up a forwarding address. You should, set up a forwarding address so that if you're not already checking your mail, it's very important that you are. You need to either forward it out, which we can help, or check it on a regular basis. So that's number one. And hopefully you can all, check after this meeting to make sure you're getting all the important messages. Different mailing list link can be found here. Space, keys, and access. Again, we are located in CS. We could put a CS in front of it, but there's no CS on the door. 126 in the computer science building. We deal with card reading access to the building, and you need your IDs for that. So if you haven't already gotten your IDs, that's number one, to be able to get after hours access to the buildings you need access to. You need that. The CS building is open between 8 and 6. So if you come in then, you don't need your ID. The LGRC low rise, because some of you are located in that room too, or in that building, the hours are 7 to 11. So you wanna, they're on the library schedule, so they're open longer than we are in computer science. Back to what we were saying about the building references, you'll sometimes hear people reference CS with the number. It means the CS building. You, again, won't see a CS in front of it. The Letterly Graduate Research Center, another acronym, they throw lots at you. So that's LGRC. The low rise, and there is a tower also. So with A in front of it, that does signify that you are in the low rise. So the A in front of your room is important to tell people if they're trying to locate you in LGRC. The tower, again, is connected to the low rise, and we have the Ed Lab and a couple labs are in that building also, so you may or may not need to know that building too much. The faculty need to request keys or access on your behalf. If you are already assigned to a room, which hopefully most of you are, I was going to try to look before, but I never got a chance. We can give you access based on the fact that you're already assigned. But if you're not assigned, say you're working with 2 groups and you're needing access to another lab, we need the faculty to request that on your behalf, because we just need their permission to give you access. You can have access, we just need permission. Please work directly, but also sending mail to system and CCing your faculty member is also an option. Because if they're part of it, they're usually going to say, yes, I approve. They may ask you to do it. That's acceptable as well. Building issues of any kind, please be respectful and mindful of the other people around you. Putting food waste in your lab is not going to be welcomed by anyone because it will probably stink quite quickly. So we do ask that you recycle properly, and there's the kitchenette in each of the rooms. The LGRC rooms here, which are common spaces, are the master space, which isn't space that you'll be using, but A260 as well as A315. These are both like lounge areas. A315 has a kitchenette, so it has a sink and a refrigerator. A319 is the printer room. So these are all located in LGRC. If you have a key to a lab, your key will open these rooms if they are locked. So keep that in mind. If you get to the printer room and you go, oh darn, it's shut, use your key if you're in LGRC. The same holds true for computer science building. If you're in the computer science building and you go to a conference room or you go to a printer room and the door happens to be shut and locked, please just use your key. You'll be able to unlock that and get in. The support pages, I put the link of this page that we're talking about now into the chat. So if you're following along, the wikis that I'm speaking of now, there's a community wiki as well as a support page wiki. You do need to access it with your authentication through the CICS account. And you need to put in your username and your password and click the blue box that's labeled log in with CICS account. If you hit return, you're going to get a permission denied error. So that's sort of on this document. Also, I'm going to, after this talk, send you the text that is right here displayed into an email with the link to this site. So you don't, again, need to memorize anything. I just want you to get that overview. Web access can be found here, as well as mailing lists. You are on grads, broadcast, social, and seminars. You're probably already getting lots of messages about people moving out and things that you might want to buy and things you might not want to buy. It's up to you if you want to be on social. You can ask to be removed, and you can ask to be removed from seminars. I wouldn't recommend it because you can use filters and just filter the mail, but these are two you can be removed from. You can't be removed from broadcast, and you shouldn't be removed from grads, but you can't even be removed from that. But if you leave the program, you obviously would be removed. So those are examples of that. These mailing lists can be found on this link, as well as we have a mailman mailing list server, which has other lists that people might want to start a group on something. And they might say, oh, I like to do archery. I like to go hiking. I mean, there are groups that are started already. And then there are new groups forming with the new group of people coming in September. You might find that you want a list to maintain. We can help set up that list for you. So keep that in mind. Again, the link is here. Your personal web page for your promoting yourselves, putting your resumes up, doing the different things that you want to let people know what you're doing. This is where you would find the information about creating your own directory. It's under the public_HTML directory under people. You all by default have that set up with your tilde username under the department site or college site. So that's important just to hear that that's available to you when you need to click there and you want to do it and you have questions, send mail to system. But here's your own kind of self-help if you'd like. Again, details for setting them up are here. And then the community wiki is just again pointed to here. Network access is going to be one of your first things that you ask for is to how do I get on the network? Well, there's 3 networks that I'd like you to be aware of. CS Public, which just gives you mail and web. That sort of is the network that if you had a visitor joining you in the room and they just needed to pop on the network quickly, they could go on to this network. The next one is CICS. Much like the name, it's our network in our 2 areas. You would need your CICS credentials to access that. Eduroam, hopefully you all know, or you will soon know, that Eduroam is the campuses as well as out in the world. There's other campuses that use it also that you would be part of. You need your UMass credentials, your username at UMass with that password to use that. If you're in Boston and you're Dartmouth or somewhere, you could connect to your identity there. So that's helpful. If you don't know, internal web pages can be found here. Again, your public account would be used to go onto our network. Wireless information about how to access them, what they're called, can all be found right here. Eduroam points to campuses, notes or documents, web pages on how to access that. The EdLab is worth noting because that is where some of the courses not only will you be taking, but also that you might be helping professors with, or I don't even know at this point, but you might have access to need TA space for someone. This is where the information lies, that the TA consulting for reserving space, because you don't want to do TAing or group work within your labs unless it's with your lab mates, because they won't like that. So we do have space that people can sign up for that. I went through things really quickly because I was hoping, like I said, that you would just get an overview of things. I also know that you are going to get information overload. So I'm hoping that you have this friendly experience saying, we're here to help you. And that's what we want to do. We want to help you do great things. I do want to know if you have any questions. I see one here. How do we get added to these mailing lists? So when you mean these mailing lists, if you mean the ones by default that you get added to, we've already done that when your account was created. That was grads, broadcast, the other ones. If you want to be added to the other mailing list, you would need to subscribe to them through the mailman interface. And again, if you send mail to system, if you're having any trouble or you think you should be on a list and you're not, we can look at that and find out what's going on. How do we recover our password for @CS if we don't have it? We, unfortunately for you, switched to a new authentication server. It's called IPA. And we did send mail to folks and ask them to reset their passwords. If you didn't reset that, which is understandable, you had a lot of stuff happening in the last few weeks, we can help do that. So send mail to system@cs.umass.edu, and we'll be happy to work with you to reset yours. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, your mail was not forwarded off. So the reset that we set up allows you to reset it once you know it. But obviously, if you're asking how to reset it, you can't get in to get that email. So we would need to reset that and give you a temp password to log in for. So hopefully that helps you. Are there any other questions? Oh, here's an, oh. Yep. So does anyone else have any questions about your accounts or about where we are or what we do? Okay, so again, I tried to not give you too much. We'll send you this link, and good luck with everything. And next speaking is Brian Levine. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and he can take over.
Okay, hi everyone. Eileen or Arlo, how long do I have to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
About 15 minutes. 20
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Brian Levine. I'm a professor here in the College of Information and Computer Science, which I joined in 1999. I work in security, specifically forensics and fighting crimes against children on the internet. And so I also lead the Cybersecurity Institute here. And so I'm just here to give you a sense of the security curriculum that we have here. And I just have a brief amount of time, but I just want to make sure you are aware of all the classes that we have. What I won't spend time talking on is the large amount of research being done in the college in security, privacy, and forensics. This includes just an enormous variety of topics that you may have some exposure to already, including adversarial machine learning, location privacy, networking, internet censorship, covert communications, theoretic fundamentals of communication, causal modeling with Dave Jensen, who does really amazing work, safe and fair machine learning, Phil Thomas, also really Yuri Brun. Adam O'Neill does a lot of crypto. I'll talk about that a little bit later. He thinks of himself as an applied cryptographer. To us, he's actually a theorist. Adam also does work on databases. Jerome Miklau and Dan Sheldon do work in differential privacy, which is actually really related to crypto. George BCS does work in cryptocurrencies. I used to do a bit more, but I still do some. As I said, I work in network forensics. Yuri and Alexandra Meliu work in fairness, especially testing for discrimination. Yuri also does work in high quality automated program repair. And then Prashant Shanoy and Don Towsley do work in IoT security, and Emery Berger has done really astounding work that's deployed all over Microsoft's operating systems, in particular on system security. He has a lot of really great open source projects. So there's more than this. There's also work in ECE. They do a lot of work on hardware and secure random number generation and something called PUFs, which is really cool. So, but what I'm really here to talk to you about is our curriculum. And just for completeness, I'll tell you that we do have a certificate in information security. I don't think you'd really be interested in that as PhD students, but it's an option. As if you're not already here with a master's and you're in the MS PhD program, which of course means that you're going to get an MS degree on your way to your PhD, please note that you can get a concentration in security along the way. So I'm going to tell you about that, but I'm going to lead with the courses that are available to you. And then of course, there's just the PhD program itself. You could, if you came in with a master's only. Okay, so at the graduate level, these are the classes, and I'm going to go through them in detail that we have available to you that are focused on security. And I'm distinguishing these because the hook they hang from, so to speak, is the security hook, and they do lots of other stuff. There's other classes in our college and on campus that have some other focus and that mention security. Maybe they're focused on machine learning and someone says something about security problems with machine learning, because there's a lot. And I also want to note in this list that before the pandemic, believe it or not, we were online. So the pandemic hit us and we were like, it's nothing. These were courses that were already offered to people online, although of course also to people on campus. So when I say they're online, you can still attend them in person. There are a couple classes that are still in person only, although of course during the pandemic, they were online. It just so happens also that these two classes, 660 and 690C, the two professors that teach them, I don't think they're offering them this year. Total coincidence, but given that you're in the PhD program and you'll be with us for a very long time, not that long, you'll have an opportunity to take these some other time. So let's go through what these courses teach. Oh, you should know we have some undergrad classes as well. They generally mirror the graduate classes. So 597N, which will soon be renamed to 560, is an introduction to computer and network security. I would say even much more focused on network security than computers. If you were an undergrad and you took an intro to security class, it probably was basically this. It's taught by Parvez Kermani, who was at IBM for 30 years and has been teaching with us for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now. He was actually part of the internet project, the first internet project. He was a grad student on that project, like where they sent the first 2 packets across the internet at the time. Just an amazing person. Here you learn some basics about security that I think no matter what you're doing in computer science, you need to know about. Things like how crypto works, how authentication works, how you secure things, how you secure your network, how you think about and analyze and mitigate threats and exposures and all sorts of modern problems that just exist whenever you put a system up. Nowadays, if you put a system up, no firewall will get hacked in 15 minutes. Also, another class is 563, fascinating class. If you're here to do CS and you want to know about how it applies to some other field, this is a great class to take. The law, I mean, I do a lot in forensics, which is to me, computer science applied to the law. The law dictates, is an instantiation of ethics per the viewpoint of some people we've elected, but it's an instantiation of those ethics that people in computer science and in security have to adhere to. This is taught by Marvin Cable, who's a local defense lawyer and has some amazing conversations about the Fourth Amendment, third-party doctrine. These are all things that when people talk about privacy, this is how people talk about privacy in the law. Like, why is it that Facebook has all your information? Is it legal for them to have that? What does it require for the government to get access to that? All sorts of great topics here, net neutrality, all sorts of things. So great class. One of the only classes that is taught in the summer. It's been offered every summer for 3 years, maybe 2 years, probably will be offered next summer too. 661 is a networking core and it's secure distributed systems. And it's actually about Bitcoin. And you may be thinking like, isn't that a lot of hype? And yes, Bitcoin is a lot of hype, but when I first saw Bitcoin, I was like, oh my God, this is the curation of a ton of fundamental concepts in distributed systems in a combination I'd never seen before. And to me, it's just a way to talk about things that were there that are fundamental. I mean, you can see on the list here in the middle, a series of impossibility results that were there before Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin explodes or goes away, these impossibility results will still be there. I actually did the videos and notes for this class, and then Andrew Stone teaches it. He's actually the top tech person for a known, for Bitcoin Cash, which is one of the top cryptocurrencies in the world. It's like a class where we actually talk about finance and how to secure things. No other class does that in our department. System test and defense is what other schools call ethical hacking, or getting experience on what's called the cyber range. It's basically how to attack things, because the goal is to how to defend things. So you can see we talk about malware, database SQL injection, hacking, all sorts of things. Everything you need to know with real machines on how to secure a system. 590J is called cyber effects, which is a word no one's ever heard of before, but is kind of a buzzword. What it really means is reverse engineering, exploit analysis, and capability development. This is a really interesting class. It's taught by 5 professionals from MITRE. I think 4 of them have PhDs. One of them is an alum from UMass. And it's basically like, if I took an embedded system into your office building, should you allow that? How do you possibly analyze that? What can you do to open up the system as a third party and analyze what it's actually doing to decide whether it's secure and should be used in your system? So very interesting class. Very MITRE, if you don't know, is a nonprofit government contractor. They're what's called an FFRDC, federally funded research and development center. Super professional people who move what we do in research to practice, and to get a chance to work with them is a great opportunity. 590K is advanced digital forensics. This is taught by Mark Libertori, who's like one of our campus-wide award-winning teaching faculty, teaching professor. And so there's an undergrad class in forensics that I teach, and Mark and I are trying to align these 2 classes. But basically the topics cover file carving and reconstruction, sampling of data that you'd find on a system, getting data and recovering it from modern file systems, network and cloud forensics, memory forensics, anti-forensics. And in fact, one of the things Mark and I are going to do this fall is update this class to include machine learning. Because as I said, I run a lab where we do a lot of system building and tool building for rescuing children, and machine learning has become a very fundamental part of what we do. So I think it should become part of the class. Okay, and there are a bunch of ad hoc courses around. The ones I could think of, we've offered a class called 596E, or sometimes it's called 696E, which is a group independent study where we took machine learning and apply it to child rescue tools. We work with investigators who rescue children directly and try to, for example, like, well, it's blurred right now, but if there was some stuff behind me, you would see some text. And what can you gather from that information? Can you gather what country I'm in? Can you get a sense of maybe some geography I'm in? If you had a bunch of text from a situation, gee, I don't know you people, and I shouldn't get too far into this topic, but there's lots of situations where you want to gather information from a public setting in order to rescue a child. You might imagine how you might use machine learning to make that happen. There's also been seminars, like Dave Jensen and I taught a seminar, a paper reading class, in other words, on adversarial machine learning. And there's a speaker series in security. We used to offer a 1 credit for that. We've done that for 5 years. This year, we're still having the speaker series, but we're not going to offer the 1 credit just to see if that works better. But you should be aware of that. Okay, almost done. 660 is the graduate level course on security, advanced information assurance. 597N, which was the very first class I listed with Parviz, that's a class that's like textbook security, things you should know. This is a class that is a course. It's not a paper reading course, but the content is strictly based on the latest research. So it's not like paper reading at UMass is like every week one of the students gets up and talks about it. These are classic papers, although some of them new. A lot of them new in security, let's say classic topics, new papers, and sort of exactly what's going on. What do you need to know to get involved in security research? And Amir teaches this, but I think, like I said, he's not offering it this year. And then we have a class on graduate level applied crypto. I love this class because Adam calls it applied crypto, but then you'll see the very first sentence, which I took from the syllabus, is graduate level introduction to crypto, emphasizing formal definitions and proofs of security. I mean, this is a math class, very theoretical. If you really want to understand crypto from someone who is a cryptographer versus just saying, oh, there's a hash function, I guess it does this, this is the class to take. Adam came to us from Georgetown, where he taught crypto for years. Again, great class. Okay, and so like I said, there's a certificate. You can take 5 classes. I'm going to skip this. I don't think you guys should really look into this too much. Okay, so last couple things I want to say are about the MS degree and the concentration. So to place this in context and maybe to remind you, maybe you only heard about the MS degree requirements for the first time today. At a high level, it's 10 courses. 4 of the classes are core classes, which means basically you need a B or a better. And I think if you're in the MS PhD program, they basically, there's a fewer set of classes than you could take if you were in the MS only program. Like in general, they're at the 600 level, I believe. So you need a machine learning core, a theory core, a systems core, and then one of these again, one of machine learning again, one of systems again, et cetera, 4 total. And then you get 6 electives, bam, you get an MS degree. Typically in the PhD program, your synthesis project is 2 of the courses. It takes the place of 2 of the courses, but let's just call it 6 electives right now. So if you want to get the MS degree in security, what you would do is take the machine learning core just like before, the theory core just like before, but your systems core will be one of 660 or 597N. Since 660 is not being offered this year, we're allowing you to do 597N. And I'm going to come back to the asterisk in a minute. It's especially relevant for PhD students. The 4th core is both like liberating and constricting. It can be classes that the normal MS degree would not accept as a core, but for security, you can. So 661 would be a 4th systems core for the non-concentration, but 590K is an option only in this concentration. So you get some options here, but you can't take like a 4th machine learning class, okay? Now, of the 6 classes that you have as electives, 2 of them have to be in security from what I've given you already. So basically, what is the concentration in security? 4 of your 10 classes are in security. That's kind of what it means. The last thing I want to point out, and you should really email me or Eileen about this later if you decide to do the concentration, is just be careful. Like if you decide to take 597N this year, there's a separate requirement about how many 600 level classes you need to take to graduate. And you're not going to satisfy that, whereas a normal core would. So just put that in the back of your mind and then ask about it before it sneaks up on to you later. And that's it. That's all I wanted to say. I'd be happy to take any questions, clarify. I talk super fast, especially when I'm told that I don't have a lot of time. So you can also email me. I'll just write on the screen if you want to talk to me. It's bnl@umass.edu. And if there's no questions and I don't see any in the chat, then I'm going to introduce Emma Anderson, who's the next presenter. And I can stop screen sharing so she can start. Sound good? Okay. All right, Emma, I'm going to hand it off to you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Brian.
Take care.
All right. Hello. Did I look in a mirror before I got on Zoom? I did not. All right. Welcome, everybody. I know you've been listening to a lot of people all day. My name is Emma Anderson, and I am the Director of Inclusive Education and Teaching Support. If you have a TA ship this semester, you and I have been emailing. So what I'm going to present about is about having a job as a graduate student. Some of you have had many jobs before. Some of you have worked in industry. Some of you have maybe worked a job as a master's student. But for some of you, it's totally new. And for all of you, it's new at CICS. So I'm going to share some slides on things to know. My slides say being a TA, but this can apply, many things about this can apply to being an RA. Okay, so a little crash course in and working as a graduate student, and particularly being a TA, which eventually all of you will be a TA for one semester, but maybe not for a while for some of you. So for both TAs and RAs, the basics are that you have responsibilities, you have rights, and we want you to ask for help when you need it. So your responsibilities are that this is a job. So what does that mean? It means that you essentially have to like hold up your end of the bargain. You have to do some things. It's not, even when you're doing research as a job, it's not like a magical thing that just happens. And when you're doing a TA as a job, it's also not a magical thing that just happens. You have duties that you'll need to perform. And there are some underlying duties that may not be clear to you from your supervisor. And so that's what I want to go over with you. So number one is to communicate. Honestly, if you are a on-time and clear communicator, you can avoid almost any problem in a TA or RA job. This means to read and answer your email. And to also complete your assigned tasks on time, or if you can't complete them on time, communicate. Just let someone know something came up, I got sick, I'm gonna be 12 hours late on this grading deadline. Or you asked for this draft on this Friday and I'm really struggling. Is it okay if I give it to you on Saturday? When you are working a TA-ship particularly, one thing that comes up is that you have like research duties and you have course duties, like courses you're taking, that might come up and sort of feel like they need to supersede your TA position. Yes, and you can ask for flexibility from your TA supervisor. However, it is your job to be a TA. So I would ask that if you know you're going to have a paper deadline, like maybe you know right now that you have a paper deadline at the end of October, make sure that you tell your TA supervisor, you know, it could be that at the end of October, I'm not going to be able to get the grading done on time, and then they can plan ahead. Or they can help you plan ahead and say, okay, well, I'm really going to need your help grading the midterm like the week before that. So make sure that you block out X number of hours. So you can communicate about that ahead of time. What's not okay is 12 hours before your grading deadline, you write to a professor and you say, I forgot I had a paper. I'm not going to be able to do the grading for another 3 days. That's not what we want. So communicate, think ahead. And also, when you're asked to show up, you need to show up. So that's if you're asked to show up to class, if you're asked to show up for your office hours, your lab meetings, your discussion sections, grading sections. And if you can't, communicate. Now, for both RAs and TAs, you have a contract for 20 hours unless you have something different. You might have a contract for 10 hours. You might have a 10-hour RA plus 10-hour TA contract. You might have something different. But remember that that's what your contract says. So you're going to work on average that much. Some weeks you may work more, some weeks you may work less. With an RA-ship, it does get complicated because you're here to do your own research, and then here you are being paid for like X amount of research. So it can get fuzzy. But for a TA-ship, remember that your contract does say 20 hours. Okay. Second thing for responsibilities is that like you are beholden to the law. So particularly with TAs, TA appointments, and when you're working with students, you should have taken FERPA training already. The big thing is you cannot disclose grades to anyone outside of the course unless they're like academically involved. So if a parent calls you, if a reporter calls you, if another faculty member asks you, and doesn't say why they want to know, you can't disclose that grade. Fairness, you should be grading students all the same way when you're grading them. Some students have disability accommodations or accessibility accommodations, and those can change testing conditions or can change the conditions of an assignment, but they won't change your grading metrics. And you already heard from Andrew, I think, about academic honesty. This applies to being a TA as well. You can't assist students in plagiarizing. And then Title IX is anytime you see discrimination, harassment, violence, things that are kind of messed up happening, we encourage you to report that and get help. So I'm going to talk about Erica Dawson-Head a little bit later in this presentation. She's a great person to go to, also the Dean of Students, and I can help you with that. You can always come to me as well. And you also have a responsibility to be considerate to everyone you're working with. A lot of that is communication, honestly. Like, the more we communicate, the more upfront we are with each other, the more we ask questions when we need to, the easier it's going to be on everybody. Please do remember to respect quiet workspaces if you're working on campus. You know, other people are working in other offices, other people are working in your office. Make sure that you're on the same page and respecting folks. And then do your best to be kind and compassionate in person and online. Sometimes things can get sticky with written communication. You may think that you are writing something clearly and directly in the way that it needs to be said, and someone else can take it as like, wow, they were really mean to me. And if that happens, please do ask for help in breaking down like how you could say it differently or what you might need to do in order to help figure out how to go forward. It's okay if you make a mistake. We're all going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes in person and not just online. A lot of us don't know how to be humans anymore since we've been in isolation for so long, and that's okay. But just ask for help. And know that what you want to do is be aiming for being considerate. GEO is coming a little bit later, and they are going to talk to you about your rights as a union member. You have a right to be communicated with, so anyone supervising you should be communicating with you about your duties. And anyone that you're working with should be respecting you and your time and your workspace. Like, you have a right to have somebody not continually ask you to cover their office hours that they're bailing on, that kind of thing. And if this isn't happening, please ask for help. You can always come to me, which is going to be like a theme of this presentation. I have an office in the CS building. I'll give you my email address. I have a phone. Like, please reach out to me. I really want to know, because at the end of the day, the biggest thing is that when you communicate at the beginning of a problem, when you first start to see an issue, it's so much easier to solve than if you let it go a whole semester and you're like, actually, this is a huge, terrible problem now. You're not bothering me if you come to me with what you think is a small problem. I promise you. I promise you. So please do ask for help. I forgot that was on the next slide. You never have to fix it yourself. Please ask for help. You've got loads of people that you can talk to. You can talk to your lab mates or your fellow TAs. You can talk to professors. You should have a peer mentor who you can talk to. You can talk to me, Erica Dawson-Head. You can talk to Eileen. I will say, like, you can talk to me about anything, but like a lot of things Eileen and I are going to collaborate on, and especially things that have to do with courses or policy or contracts. All of those things Eileen has the answers to, and I don't really. So know that we're going to be in tandem figuring out who's going to be best to solve the problem. And you can always just email both of us if you're not sure. Some things to know as a TA. This is like super crash course, and this is definitely a TA slide. We have these things called UCAs. They're undergraduate course assistants. So these are undergraduate students who are working to assist you in courses. You will likely have to supervise some of them. They're all wonderful. I supervise all of them as well. So if you have problems, please come talk to me. Anyone referred to as a grader is somebody in the MS program who is hired specifically to grade in graduate level courses. We have a few working in undergraduate level courses this year. This is a little old. We used to use Piazza as an online question and answer forum. Some classes are using Piazza, some are using something called CampusWire. So if you hear those, that's what those are. Moodle is our course management system. It's also now referred to as Moonami, I believe, because now it's like in, I don't know, it's a different deployment of Moodle. And then you may also be using Gradescope, which is an online grading platform. Just in case you've heard any of those words yet and you're like, oh, what does that mean? Okay, I'm going to skip the scenarios because I don't have time. But I'm happy to go through with them through them with you at some other time. You're going to be communicating online a lot, even though we're in person. So guess what? Read and reply to your email, please. I cannot say this enough. I always think it's a good idea to like think about what something would sound like if you said it out loud. And is it something that you would say out loud in exactly the same way, or would you say it a little bit differently? And that's a good way to sort of figure out like, oh, do I need to like rewrite this? And always try and be kind and respectful. So I do like to give this example of something that did actually happen. This was, I believe this was an undergraduate student who wrote this answer, but please don't berate students when you answer forum posts. They're all vulnerable and worried and want to be told they're doing a good job. Please be gentle with them. Don't tell them that they're going to be unemployable in 3 years. So how can I help you? And how can Erica Dawson-Head, who you're not seeing here, but she is the Director of Diversity and Community Development, how can we help you? If you want to start a new student group, if you feel uncomfortable for any reason and just need to talk it through with someone and you don't know what to do, you can absolutely come to either of us. If you're experiencing anxiety, depression, this is a new experience for you, you're not sure exactly what to do or how to access resources about it, you want to engage more in the community, you're having an awkward moment with a faculty member or a professor where somebody said something offensive or like something is just not sitting right with you and you can't put your finger on it. If something is bothering you, even if it seems small, please come talk it out with us. The earlier you come to us, the better. And this is especially true with TA problems. If you're a TA and you see a red flag of any kind, or you're starting to worry, like, what do I do about this? I'm not sure. This is not sitting right with me. Please come talk to me as soon as possible. Way easier to work it out in September than it is in December. Oh, and also, my snacks are really, really stale at this point, but I'm going to buy new snacks. So come by my office and get some snacks. I don't have my office hours scheduled yet, but once I do, I will send it out to you so you can see when my office hours are. And I also have a link that you can use to like see my calendar and schedule a meeting at a time that works for you. So you're always welcome to come and schedule something. Oh, and I think that's it. I think I did not put my email address in the slides, but I'll go ahead and stop this share, send out my email address, because please do contact me via email or stop by my office. Are there any questions on anything I presented or things that you wish I had said that I did not? I'm gonna give you just an extra minute in case you're typing a question in the chat.
For those of us not assigned yet where like the lab is, where the office is, you just communicate with your advisor about that?
Yeah, so I know that, so you're talking about like a lab space to work on research, right?
Yeah, like a
Okay.
desk.
Yeah. So I know that there's been some difficulty finding places for everyone to work. So the two people who are involved in that are going to be your advisor and just like Eileen posted in the chat, CSCF, Terry, who was here before. So when you send an email to system@cs.umass.edu, they answer you so fast because there are a bunch of people monitoring that email. It's a great way to get questions answered about any kind of facilities or IT thing.
Because my advisor, it's her first year being in person, like being a professor in person, because she joined last year.
Mm-hmm.
So she's probably also new to all of these.
Yeah, so you could just send an email to system@cs and copy her. I don't think that you're going to be you're not going to be circumventing anything if you go right to CSCF because they're always checking in with the advisors.
Okay. And then Eileen said that CSCF is still assigning spots.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a lot of space moving around this year.
Okay, great. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm so excited you're here. I'm so excited to get to talk to you more. Thanks for being here. And I am now going to hand it off to our next presenter, who is our GEO rep. That's the Graduate Employment Organization, the Graduate Union. I myself am a proud member of the Professional Staff Union, and so I love that you get a chance to talk to your union reps. So I'm going to turn off my camera and say goodbye so that they can get started on their presentation.